struggles, which a lot of people do complain about, including me. So
I'll give you an Islamic solution. Right? So in Islam, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and in the Quran, there's a big emphasis on empathy. So for example, God says things like, I'm paraphrasing here, you should forgive others because wouldn't you want God to forgive you? Or love for others what you love for yourself. There's a big emphasis on the golden rule. The big emphasis on wanting for others what you want for yourself. Okay. So when it comes to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was a young man who wanted to commit fornication. And the Prophet, he asked the Prophet, will you allow me to commit fornication? And in Islam it's not allowed. So the Prophet didn't say to him, it's wrong, don't do it. He didn't say to him, go do it. He asked him some questions. He said, how do you like someone committing fornication with your mother? And the guy was like, he didn't like that. And he said, no, he wouldn't accept that. How do you like someone doing that to your sister? And again, he was like, he wasn't accepting that. How do you like someone to do that to your daughter? And then he got the point that this was something that he doesn't want to do to someone else. So the Prophet said to him, I'm paraphrasing here, that the people don't want for them what you don't want for yourself, right? So he was teaching him empathy. And in today's world, we don't have that. So this is where revelation of the Quran, the religion of Islam, can provide a moral guidance that in a world of materialism, liberalism only makes it worse when Islam has a solution.
But then how do you, if that is true,
how do you apply it?
How do you apply it? How do you get people who are following liberalism en masse? Because we're talking a lot of people from. How do you get them to then come to the path of Islam?
What you do is you popularize the narrative that I'm speaking about now, which is the Islamic solution. So in Islam, you probably heard of dawah, right?
Yes.
Dawah is propagation. So what we as Muslims do is we go out and we speak to non-Muslims like yourself and we say, look, this is the problem in the world and here is a moral solution. And we don't look for one solution. We look for multiple solutions, whether it's racism, wealth inequality, sexism, oppression in the world. For example, a massive issue in the world is unchained capitalism. Now, if we look at many economies in the world, there is this perception that there's equality in the world. There's a perception that there is an egalitarian world order, when in reality, we're not that far off from the time of colonialism. Poor countries are bought out by rich countries, their currencies are dictated by those richer countries, and we have a situation in the world where the poor are getting poorer and the rich are getting richer. Did you hear recently about Jeff Bezos and him making billions of dollars? That massive increase in wealth that he had recently.
No, I didn't know about that. But I know in regards to when you were talking about countries controlling the currency of other countries, I know in the French-speaking parts of Africa, something they call francophone, or where the currency there is somehow dictated by France. The value of their currencies, it's interconnected and it's dictated by France.
And that's like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the issues of how many colonial powers till today still run things in their former colonies. And now we have another power in the world which is doing the same thing, which is China. So it's doing, you see, you've heard of the East India Company, right?
Wow, we're going way back historically.
Yeah. Well, how different is the Chinese Communist Party from the East India Company? They're going to poorer countries, giving them loans. They can't pay back the loans, then they take their property. Like recently in Sri Lanka, one of the ports, they built it for them. They couldn't pay for it, so they decided to take it on a 99-year lease.
But the people that allowed them to do that, the leaders, would you then say they are following the philosophy of self-interest? They're being materialistic, which is liberalism.
No, which is liberalism facilitates it. Yeah. So in Africa, many African countries are opening their doors wide to Chinese investment without realizing it's a Trojan horse. Without realizing they're getting battered from the Western world, now they're going to get battered from the Chinese Communist Party, right? And in a world without revelation, in a world without God being the moral guide, these things cannot be morally objected to. Because all that you have is the will to power, like Nietzsche spoke about, right? So might is right. If they have the power structures in place, they win, and with revelation, we have a trump card that we can say, no, despite of you having this power, this is morally objectionable.
I mean, I'm biased when you say that because I get into a lot of arguments and debates with the far right, and they do use that term, might is right. So I'm biased in the sense that I would automatically agree with you. But in regards to what you said, to stem the tide of liberalism getting more popular, you said one of the things that you would use is dawah.
Dawah, yeah.
Hopefully through dawah you would convince people to come to Islam, and through Islam they would be following the teachings or the laws of Allah.
Yeah.
Which would be against liberalism.
Not only this, liberalism has a promise, and the promise is that of happiness, the pursuit of happiness, right? So if you like the American dream, have you heard of Yuval Noah Harari? Have you heard of the book Sapiens?
Sapiens.
Yeah, very famous book. But anyway, he's a really famous author, and he's written a lot on liberalism. He's written on evolutionary biology and other stuff. Anyway, so he's a liberal, but he gives a very interesting understanding of liberalism. He says, liberals look at every problem from an economic lens. So if someone's unhappy, it's because they don't have a job. If someone's unhappy, it's because they don't have opportunities. If someone's unhappy, we have an economic solution. But the problem in the world is, not every problem is an economic problem. People have a lot of wealth, but they're miserable. And this is something which the liberal dream, it has this pipe dream which never actually comes true. When you get those things, you don't become happy. So for example, today we're told, if you're more famous, if you're more rich, if you're more acceptable, if you're more good looking, if you have a higher status, you will be happy. This is what we're told. Yet if we look at the people who have all these things, they say, money doesn't make me happy. For example, Jim Carrey. He's a famous celebrity. He, Ace Ventura, The Mask, and all these films. So he has it all. Money, wealth, women, status, power, social media. And he said, I wish everybody has what I have, so they know this is not the answer. We even have rich people who commit suicide. And there's a law of diminishing returns. So when you have something, you're like, wow. But over time, you get used to it and it becomes like anything else.
So then, could you give me an example of one of the something within Islam which would challenge liberalism that a human being could use that would help them?
Good, very good. Do you have a copy of the Quran? Hold the mic for a second, please. So in the Quran, there's a big emphasis on materialism, okay? And there's some verses in the Quran, I probably won't be able to find them by flicking through, but the verses are repeatedly about fighting off materialism, to the point where God says, do not basically be impressed by people of wealth, where God teaches us that the true happiness is not the happiness of having lots of wealth or status or power or image. It's actually, and this is also what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, teaches, that it's by having a relationship with God. So God links materialism and these types of things to a path which is leading away from him. And he leads content, and this is what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, talks about, contentment and having a relationship with God. These are things which give you peace. So the promise of Islam, the promise of the Quran is that if you have a relationship with God, you will be happy. If you remember God, you will be at peace. Your heart will be at peace. In the Quran it says, in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. Liberalism says, in the remembrance of society, in the remembrance of celebrities, Kim Kardashian, whatever, that's where you'll get happiness. So Islam has a totally different narrative. You see, liberalism is like Superman. It's like this unchained power. Islam comes along with this kryptonite and says, look, it doesn't work. We have this solution. And this problem of unchained liberalism is only going to make people unhappy, because who exists in the world today that can say, I have everything I want, I'm content? The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, if the son of Adam, if a human being had a valley of gold, he would want another valley. And nothing will satisfy the human except dust in the belly, meaning when they die and they're in the grave and they are finished. So liberalism, it teaches us the exact opposite of what Islam is trying to teach us.
So then would you have an example, because you've given me examples of how liberalism is affecting people. And obviously there are a lot of people who like liberalism because they live in a country that has liberalism.
Let's stick to materialism, because that's...
I mean, but that's part of the liberalism. They like the materialism. They haven't got a problem with it. But are you saying then through Islam that the person following Islam would not become, in your definition, materialist?
Yes.
So, but you would still have wealthy Muslims.
Okay, good.
That would have mansions.
Yeah, very good question. In Islam, gaining wealth is not a bad thing. So I'll tell you a little story. Once there was a young man who was walking past some of the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, some of the companions. And that young man was going quite fast and he's going to work. And some of the people sitting around, they said, if only he had the same enthusiasm for gaining knowledge of Islam instead of going for work. And the Prophet said, do not say that. If that young man, the Prophet was explaining, if he's going and he's earning wealth so that he can provide for his parents, then he is in the path of God. He is in the path of God. If he's going to provide for his parents. If he's going to provide for his children, he's going to work to provide for his children, then he's in the path of God. If he's going to provide and work to be self-sufficient so he doesn't have to ask people, then he's in the path of God as well. And then he said, if he's going so he gains wealth and so he can, I don't remember the words exactly, but like show off or this type of thing, then he's in the path of the devil. So Islam says gaining wealth for the right intention, even that could be worship. So for example, one of the scholars of Islam, his name was Ibn Taymiyyah, very famous scholar. He said, doing business is a good thing, is actually worship, because it increases your trust in God. And my father was a businessman, and he used to say to me that, I'm paraphrasing here, but he used to say to me, if you don't do business, how are you going to help poor people? So if you have the intention of doing business and then giving charity and helping people and helping your relatives and doing good, you doing business is an act of worship. So Islam doesn't say be poor. Islam doesn't say don't believe in progress, don't believe in science, don't believe in, become a hermit and live in a cave.
It was in regards to the materialism, and you've explained it.
Yeah.
And the part from what I got that you're saying in liberalism, where the materialism is bad, is that it is about showing off and about the self. Whereas you were saying if somebody's wealthy and they're a Muslim, you said that if they then started showing off, they were going down the path of Satan, you mentioned.
Yeah. So the thing is, in Islam, showing off is a very bad thing. Okay? And the whole point of you having wealth is for you to get closer to God. And the thing is, Islam teaches, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, true richness is, I've forgotten the narration, but basically, in Islam, we're taught contentment. We're not taught unbridled, unhinged materialism. Go and just earn money and try and show off. If you look at most people are competing with someone else. So, my neighbor has a bigger car. Or this person is better looking than me. Or this person why is it people get surgery? Why is it people go under the knife? Take someone like Michael Jackson. He was continuously trying to look better. And a lot of people today, someone may look at him and laugh and say, how ridiculous. Why did he do that? When in fact, if most people had money and they could, change the way they look, if they don't believe in God, if they believe in liberalism, if they believe in materialism, why wouldn't they change the way they look? Because I'm in my 30s now. I'm getting these slight lines here. You can get surgery to get rid of this. You can get liposuction. You can get all these types. You can make your biceps bigger, right? So this is why I believe Islam and the revelation of Islam is a cure to today's ills.
Okay, as usual, I'm grateful to the talk. Learned a lot. I can say I can only hope you. Wish you the best of luck in the dawah in helping to combat liberalism.
Well, we don't believe in luck, but I understand. God's blessing.
God's blessing.
But hold this mic for a second. Let me show you something. I know you have a copy of the Quran, but I want to give you this copy.
This one is Barakah. Is it Barakah? Barak.
This is Al-Furqan. Do you have this one?
This one.
Okay, since you have this one, I want you to read this.
I've been using tafsir to try and understand.
Oh, really? That's really good.
There's a thing called altafsir.com.
Yeah, that's a really good website. So, chapter 18 is called The Cave. This is something I recommend you read because this is all about materialism and this is linked to the end times. It's a very short chapter, but this chapter, right from the beginning to the end, it has a huge emphasis on fighting off materialism. So make sure you have a read of that.
Surah 18. I'll do that. Thank you very much, Suboor. It's a pleasure, as usual.
Good speaking to you. No. I don't know what this is. It was a what? Oh, right. Done. Assalamualaikum, bro. How you doing, man? You alright? You
No, I
good?
didn't say salam when I left you that day.
Oh,
You know why?
why?
Because I had a feeling.
I don't remember.
Oh,
You not saying
I
something.
felt bad after because I thought, oh, maybe he did. Because I'm like that. I think a bit over the top. I had a feeling he was going to stop the conversation. So I would have interrupted at that